Welcome to the Rowdy Studio. I'm Steven Levine. This is Tom Vandervoort. And Tom, our long national nightmare is finally over. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finds victory lane at Michigan.
4 years later, and pretty interesting how it happened, considering all the trouble the team had on Saturday when they brought in that new left side tire. And to overcome that, I mean, it strikes you as similar in some ways to last week, you know, because Joey Logano came to Joe Gibbs Racing and got a win pretty early. It was rain-induced, that victory. And then years later, he comes back with a dominating win at Pocono. Now, Dale Jr. obviously
much more accomplished
than Joey Logano. But 4 years ago, fuel mileage win early in his stint at Hendrick Motorsports. And now 4 years later, he comes back with a legitimate, dominating, extremely impressive win. And I think the guy's a championship contender, right? Matt Kenseth said it. I'll say it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's as much of a championship contender as Matt Kenseth at this point. Second in points, I think only 4 points behind Matt Kenseth. If you looked at Dale Jr.'s history at Michigan, it wasn't stellar. I think it was 8 top 10s and 25 starts. There was nothing to indicate that he was going to vie for the win. So I think this is even more of a statement because of the track at which he broke through. Let's move on. You mentioned the tires. During the couple of days of testing at Michigan, there were lots of issues with blistering tires. NASCAR and Goodyear got together Friday night, decided to bring in a new, harder tire that they thought could stand up to the speeds a little bit better. The guys qualified on the old tire. On Saturday night, they had one extra practice session with the new tire and then ran it on Sunday. Was this an issue? Was this mismanagement on the part of Goodyear? I mean, they had a tire test back in April.
No, I don't think it was mismanagement. I think you have to accept that you can't predict with an infinite amount of precision exactly what's going to happen on the race weekend when you arrive there. You've got tremendous speeds, tremendous pressure on these tires. We saw it a couple years ago at Bristol, where Goodyear comes with the best plan that they can, but they have a kind of a worst case scenario backup plan. If there's more heat in the tire or they're wearing worse, then they have a backup plan that they can go to. They didn't spend a lot of time trying to salvage the initial plan, just like at Bristol. Remember way back to Indy? It was like, no, this'll work, it'll work, and It didn't work. They didn't spend a lot of time worrying about saving face or proving that they had the right plan. They just went to the backup plan. And that's the right thing to do, because when you look at the position Goodyear's in, they've got a car with a real high center of gravity, puts a tremendous amount of pressure on these tires to begin with. Then you bring new asphalt, you're getting cars up there at 215, 16, 17, 18. That's a lot of pressure on the tire. That's a lot of pressure on the tire. So I think they've done a fantastic job.
I agree with you, actually. Yes, the new tire, the harder tire on Sunday made it harder to pass. It made the cars slower, but the alternative would have been a lot of blown tires and a lot of wrecked race cars, and nobody wants that. Jeff Gordon himself, and Tony Stewart for that matter, lauded Goodyear. They said there's not a tire on earth that could stand up to this really smooth, really fast pavement. And hats off to these guys. Let's talk now about Joe Gibbs Racing, specifically Kyle Busch. JGR finished 32nd, 34th, and 35th, but more importantly, or more shockingly, Kyle Busch had his third race in a row with engine issues.
Yeah, and remember, the team switched from building their engines in-house to going with a TRD engine that they would then modify in-house. And so now you look at this and you say 3 weeks in a row, engine trouble for Kyle Busch, 3 poor finishes, and all of a sudden we talk a lot about margin for error.
There's none.
Because you know that you're going to have some bad finishes that aren't your fault. So what you want to do is avoid anything self-inflicted. Now, you don't know where these problems are creeping in for Kyle Busch. At least we don't.
Well, what's interesting
is you hope that the team has figured it out, but you got to question that too.
But why are they not showing up for the 11 and for the 20, but really only for the 18? Is that just random?
I think it could very well be
But it could also be something that the 18 team is doing. Some way they're tuning that the other two aren't.
The way I understand it, the way these engines are prepared, there's not too much that's individual to the driver. So I don't think, it's certainly possible, but I would guess it's more coincidental that this has happened to Kyle specifically. Now, Kyle Busch is going to have some good finishes the rest of this year, but you can't throw in a bunch of 3, 5, 10-point days in there. You got to have the 20, 30 points. You can't throw those in there because it just takes away all the good that you do.
Look, we know with this point system, it's hard to gain positions in the standings. It's also hard to lose positions in the standings, but the one thing that will allow you to do that is consistent poor finishes. And that's right now what Kyle Busch is showing us through no fault of his own.
No.
So
no fault of his own.
Pretty soon there's going to be movement in the standings if this continues.
Absolutely. The single most valuable thing you can do as a driver or a race team is avoid the bad finish. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Avoid the 5-point day. Avoid that. And you'll go a long way to success in this series. He has not been able to do that the last 3 weeks.
All right. That's Tom Vandervoort. I'm Steven Levine. We appreciate you watching. We'll be back with lots more NASCAR junk.